This week on a delicious Eldritch Lorecast.
Before we get on to fun things, let me be pedantic a little second longer.
Why don't you just get another system? I'm like,
you know what? You got me there.
The Jerry Springer show that's going on online with people hitting each other with chairs.
All halflings cannibals in Daxon?
No.
I don't know how successful I'll be at isolating my feelings. I am baffled.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think what we're going into is West Marches.
We don't know, and nobody knows. Like, so if anybody purports to know in any comment section, it's like, you don't know.
All that and more right now.
And speaking of believing in Dante, it is time for... Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Eldritch Lorecast, the #1 tabletop RPG podcast in all the realms. My name's Ben Byrne, and I am joined, as always, by Dael Kingsmill, Shawn Merwin, James Hake. And James, I'm going to ask you this week, if you made an actual play series, and let's assume you're the game master, but you don't have to be, what would your ideal actual play series be? What system, what setting, what number of players, the tone, the theme?
Ooh, I'll start with the things that I think are most important. And the most important one is number of players. It would be a GM and 3 players, no more than that. I think that's ideal for all games in general, and becomes even more ideal when you have people listening, because it diffuses focus. I think Critical Role and stuff can get away with it because they've got seniority, but no, if you're making an actual play, have like 3 people, maybe 4 maximum. System, what's good for actual play? I do Blades in the Dark. I do something Blades in the Dark-y. You know what? I do Wild Sea. I've never seen a Wild Sea actual play before, and it's got a lot in common with the Blades system. It's got this sort of swashbuckling, weird science fantasy vibe going on with it. Do you guys know about Wild Sea? Should I explain Wild Sea?
I think you've mentioned it before.
It's the one where trees drank up all the oceans, and now you ride on chainsaw boats.
Oh, yeah.
Sick. Yeah, I'm here for it.
And it uses a very Blades in the Darky system. Those are my 2 most important answers. Going to someone else after this. 3 people, Wild Sea.
If I made an actual play, it would be completely by accident because someone else would have to be there with cameras and or microphones. And so I would probably be running 5th edition D&D. It would probably be the same old schlubs that I usually game with, anywhere from 3 to 7 of them. Running any sort of fantasy game where we don't have to pay close attention, and it's more about relaxing and having fun than it is telling an in-depth story, and therefore, and nobody's watching.
Okay,
fair enough.
But if you did an actual play that was themed to be like a mockumentary or like The Office, where you're just trying to run a game and there are cameras who are filming it, and someone just edits it to be the most ludicrous little clips, I would watch the hell out of that.
They wouldn't have to do a lot of editing with my group. It would be pretty much a mockumentary right from the start.
I'm just imagining the cutaway, like, mini interviews about what's going on. And every time Shawn's in one of those, he just looks like he wants to be off camera.
Well, as the person who is most likely to actually do what, I'm going to guard my real answers as carefully as Chuck Henrik guarded the good Gen Con interview locations. But I will say that idea of, the cutaways to just sort of the talking head reactions, what could have been for this Draw Steel Let's Play on MCDM. Let me tell you that much.
Like a Bravo reality show, the cutaways?
We had a whole plan.
Oh, that's such a good idea.
Yeah.
Kind of like what's the tabletop? Was that just the name of the show where they play Will Wheaton played board games? Yeah, I thought that was a great format for board games.
There was even a reference in the most recent episode that went up. There are a couple of moments where we talk about how we are planning to do that, and one of the cutaways that gets referenced that didn't get edited out was some guy saying, "Oh, there was a bug as big as an elephant, but this is meant to be some like Middle Ages rube," and it was just Colville going, "How does this guy know what an elephant is?"
Yeah, fair call. I agree with James. I would do small group. I think large groups do have their benefits. Critical Role obviously demonstrate that. Legends of Evantris have a larger group. I think they're 6 to 8 players off the top of my head. But small groups, I think, would suit well. I would obviously do a Grim Hollow actual play because that's what I would want to do, but keep it like I've always wanted to do it, just 1 player, 1 game master, and then add a second player like, 4 or 5 sessions in, 2 or 3 sessions in, and how did those characters meet, and try to make it feel organic and interesting, and the plot kind of evolve as you go along and expand, is how I've always wanted to do it. We've talked about it a lot, but never actually pulled the trigger, because actual plays take a lot of effort. And speaking of a lot of effort, Critical Role obviously put a lot of effort into thinking about what their season 4 would look like, because there are some interesting decisions. If you are listening to this podcast, chances are this is not news to you, but for the sake of anybody who is listening to this podcast for the first time, Critical Role have announced their campaign 4, and they have announced, despite many predictions made on this podcast, they are going to play Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition 2024 and not Daggerheart. Just isolating that part of the announcement, how do we feel about that decision? Is it the right call?
I don't know how successful I'll be at isolating my feelings, so maybe I'll just say for now and then hold for later. I am baffled.
Mm-hmm.
I say this as a noted Daggerheart lover. I'm surprised, but I'm not shocked. I've seen, the other shows the Critical Role has put on. I've seen their non-D&D shows. I've seen the numbers of Age of Umbra. And it does make me wonder if they've looked at how their non-main campaign shows, which tend not to use D&D Go, and thought, not good enough. Maybe they looked at the Adventure Zone and they saw how when they switched after their first arc to Monster of the Week set in West Virginia, same players, same format, same everything, all the viewership dropped off into the abyss. I think it's simply a business matter. I think that's just what it comes down to, is that people watch D&D, and Critical Role's gotten quite good at D&D. I think Daggerheart is great for people who want to tell more emotionally involved storytelling. But like Brennan Lee Mulligan has said on record in the past, he doesn't need a system to support him.
That's the truth.
He doesn't need a system, full stop. No, he doesn't need a system to support him and his wacky cast of friends and characters to support their improvisational antics. The structure that D&D provides is a boon. It's not a drawback.
Sure.
There's an old meme or a video where it shows all these people gasping, and there's one guy in the background that just smiles. This huge smile. That's sort of me watching the Jerry Springer show that's going on online with people hitting each other with chairs. Because if you hated Wizards of the Coast in D&D, you're obviously upset because that's what you brought to this to start with. If you never liked Critical Role and think that any new game other than D&D is a waste of time, then you're either puffing your chest out all justified or just ignoring everything completely. So the discourse around it is just kind of, I understand, like business-wise, it's interesting. I hope it does great. I would have hoped it did great if it was Daggerheart. I would have hoped it did great if it was Paranoia. I would have hoped that it did great no matter what, because what I want is people to enjoy the hobby in any way. So if people come into the show and like D&D, great. If they come into the show and like the entertainment but don't like D&D, there's a world of other games out there. I've heard, they must be being paid by Wizards of the Coast. Maybe they are. Maybe they're not. They must be doing this because Daggerheart's not a good game. I highly doubt that. They must be doing this. Who knows why they're doing this? There's probably 10,000 reasons why they're doing this. Enjoy the show if you like it. If not, turn the switch and find something else to watch.
I agree with you almost completely. And in terms of like the quote unquote conspiracy theories around this, I've seen the Wizards must be paying them as well. I've seen there's no faith in Daggerheart as a system. And I think that like, we don't know, and nobody knows. Like, so if anybody purports to know in any comment section, it's like, you don't know. Probably a lot of these reasons may be true a little bit, but like, I am shocked, but also I can imagine that they have reasons for doing so. Baffled
is maybe, I'm sticking to it because it's the emotional truth. I don't know whether it's the real, like actual truth in terms of my response to this, because I do think that everyone has got a little bit wild over the news.
Yeah.
I mean, something that I nearly said during the intro question, but didn't, was that if you are making an actual play that's going to use a system that isn't D&D, then you need to be careful about how you market it, right? Because you can't say a D&D actual play podcast, which does limit the returns on, search terms. If someone is looking for new D&D actual play recommendations, then yours isn't going to come up if yours isn't D&D. But you can kind of skirt around that some ways, is what I was going to say. You can frame it as fantasy. You can frame it as, all these ways of trying to get in there. And I do wonder, what is the payoff or drawback of that when you are Critical Role? Because James is right that the non-main campaigns that tend to be other systems don't get the numbers. I maintain that what is largely important is what is the main campaign. I think that people try to keep up with the main campaign. And if they get a week off where the live stream is focused on something else, is focused on one of these side games, they got to go keep up with the main campaign instead, because you miss an episode here or there and you're really trying to catch up. And I think that would still be true even if the game wasn't D&D. That is my personal claim that I can't back up, because they're not playing a game that isn't D&D, so I'll never have the evidence that I need. I don't know. It's an interesting thing to see. I think they've already, the numbers of Critical Role viewership have reached a point where I think all the people who would drop off no matter what system. I'm more concerned overall with what message it seems to send rather than the reality of what has caused it. Even if it's not anything to do with Daggerheart being ready or not ready, I do worry that it looks like Daggerheart is not ready to run a long form campaign. I worry that it looks like that with them not choosing to run it, regardless of what reason has led to that.
I don't believe, and I don't know, but I don't believe that Wizards of the Coast are giving them anything, maybe some favor for a favor down the road or something like that. Like a good relationship is what I mean, more so than favors. Keeping a healthy relationship between Wizards of the Coast and Critical Role. But in making this decision, and they'd be fully aware of this, if they're not getting anything from Wizards, they are just giving free marketing to what is now functionally a rival company for their game. They've talked about how they will do Age of Umbra, and they will continue to do other kind of side stories that are Daggerheart and showcase that system. But in not doing it as their main campaign, they are potentially missing a very large marketing opportunity to show people who... It's how so many people of my generation of getting into the hobby learned to play D&D was watching Matt Mercer tell Sam Riegel to make a charisma check and then writing down charisma check. Okay, so you roll a dice and then... and that's what they're kind of... And they'd be completely aware of that. So I this is why I think so many reasons are going into this decision. But it is interesting.
I have a question, because I honestly don't know the answer to this, and y'all would know better than I. Where does most of Darrington Press / Critical Role's revenue come from? Is it going to be selling Daggerheart and Candela Obscura and whatever other games come? Or is it going to be selling this to some other content, selling their content to Amazon Prime? Is it going to be selling out Madison Square Garden and Wembley Arena, et cetera, et cetera? Because if they're making a decision like most businesses make a decision, what they're going to say is not Wizards of the Coast is our main competitor. They're going to say Wizards of the Coast is a marketing vehicle for us to make money in these other places where we will make 10, 20, 50, 100, 1,000 times more revenue than we do by selling Daggerheart books online and in game stores.
Right. And this is the real thing. It's where we as game enthusiasts need to separate ourselves from the hype machine a little bit, because like Chad is talking about, this feels as if it's let a bit of the excitement out of the Daggerheart launch. But we should think about this, right? This has no bearing on how good or how interesting of a game Daggerheart is, unless you really want that Critical Role bump, unless you really want to see them play it. And so then you'll get that, understanding of it, that deeper understanding of it. But they're still going to be doing Daggerheart content anyway. So what is it other than you think that they have no confidence in their new system? Well, if you can just imagine that they have more insight into the problem than we do, they have the marketing metrics that we don't have. They have all the numbers, and presumably they're making a data-informed decision and not a vibes-based one, not one where some vice president somewhere said, we're doing D&D and that's final. Assuming they're not doing that, which I think is a safe bet. I want to assume they're making the right decision for them as a company, and that shouldn't impact how much we enjoy a game.
All of this is so interesting because it reminds me of something I was thinking the other day when I was reading the news for the first time. Because I've often thought about sort of MCDM and the sort of Darrington Press team as kind of interesting poles of the same magnet in terms of MCDM being primarily interested in game design, and they happen to dabble in the D&D entertainment sphere. Whereas on the other end of the spectrum, you've got Darrington and Critical Role, who are primarily interested in the D&D entertainment sphere and then dabble in game design stuff. And it was this moment where I was thinking about why in the world would they decide to do a Brendan Lee Mulligan run, West Marches campaign with D&D 2024. And then I sort of stepped back because I realized MCDM has gotten a lot of flack with the release of Draw Steel for supposedly not marketing it enough. They haven't sent out review copies to enough D&D YouTubers. They haven't, paid for enough actual plays to be made. They haven't done big advertisements. They haven't done the sort of flashy stuff. And it's really easy for me, with some small access to the inside to look at that and go, right, but that's not what they're interested in. They're interested in developing a core audience who will actually play the game, who, X, Y, Z. And so it was a moment where I finally stepped back enough to go, oh, well, I don't know what Critical Role is prioritizing. I don't know what they want out of this. So it's very easy for me on the outside to go, well, that's not the way that they should do it if they want a successful business. I don't know what they measure a successful business strategy as.
Yeah.
So they probably are making the choice that they want to make.
Nobody gets into TTRPGs to get rich, right? Unless you're Hasbro. Because it is a relatively difficult business model to gain a large sum of money on just selling books, in the same way that, we were talking about it compared to Magic the Gathering last week, that selling boosters and that sort of thing generates revenue much, much quicker than selling physical or even digital books does. And I think this, Shawn and then James and then Dael jumping in. You've all hit the nail on the head in terms of opening up my thinking of, it's like how Disney makes most of its money from its theme parks. It's like, it's not the sales of, they want to sell as much Daggerheart as possible, but that's not possibly, again, we don't know anything, and that's going to be the thumbnail for this week, possibly where their thinking is in terms of making the most amount of revenue.
We also have Matt Colville in chat quoting MCDM's general manager, Jeff, who has said, Matt, you've picked the hardest way possible to make money in gaming. So...
Yes. Yeah,
but
absolutely.
Hey, who's to say? Video games are on fire right now, so maybe there is a bit of a still ocean over here.
Like they're on fire right now, or they're on fire right now.
Yeah, they're a dumpster fire right now.
The latter.
How's the game, by the way? Is it better?
The game. I thought you said game. Yeah, I think so. I don't know. Shout out in chat if you think it's still too quiet. Speaking of gaining things, the cast of Critical Role have gained some new players because they are doing 13 players in a West Marches style campaign, split into 3 groups. And I'm going to be honest, I was like, yeah, I expected them to take a swing, especially when they announced that Brendan Lee Mulligan would be taking over as GM. But the more I thought about this idea, the more baffled I began to become about the West Marches style campaign as well. Because what's the viewer experience going to be like if you're only seeing one group of players functionally once a month if they're on rotation? You know what I mean? Like, part of the success of Critical Role from my perspective is that you got the parasocial relationship with the cast, but you also got attached to those characters. And every week, much like this podcast, you had the reliability that you could show up and you could hang out with these people and you could watch them play D&D and you could see the next part of their story. I'm not sure they're going to achieve that same level of like attachment to character if you're only seeing each character or each group on a much more spread out timeline and getting bits of story kind of chopped up week to week. Is my perception. Am I wrong?
I'm trying to recall how they did it in Campaign 3 when the teams got split up into Team Asilra and Team Wildmount. Yeah, I think it would make sense for them to do this in chunks a little bit more. Because, listen, the problems with this aside, potentially, the thing that it solves is maybe the longest standing criticism of Critical Role, and it's the diversity of the cast, right? People have talked for ages about how it's an all-white cast, how it's, it's all, and for hours and hours and hours, they are the main faces of RPGs on the internet. A couple of guests here and there, a drop in the bucket compared to the hundreds of, if not thousands of hours of a all-white game. I think there's real value in diversifying the cast a little bit, especially with faces that people already know, like Luis and Robbie and all these people who are being promoted to, main cast status. What options availed themselves to them? Either remove core cast members, which would absolutely piss people off, which would be like, oh, you're there's all sorts of anti-woke arguments you can make against this. Look, even like the affirmative action even applies to Critical Role. There's no getting off this culture war. It's like, the internet assholes write their own arguments. I don't need to try and write arguments for them. And so, the only other option other than change the core cast is expand it. I think if they do it the way that they've done it in the past, which is have chunks with the same party for a little while, so that you don't have this sort of jerked around feeling. I would say that's a good move.
I am curious though, because at least two of the people they've added into the mix are Alex Ward and Whitney Moore. But I'm interested in the labeling of it as West Marches. Because I don't think, maybe I'll be proven wrong. I don't think what we're going into is West Marches.
I could feel Shawn's rage when I read that I was like, this is not what Shawn said.
I think that it's going to be rotational play. And that's great. And I'm interested to see how they do it. And I have seen West Marches, like actual West Marches done fairly successfully in actual plays before. I remember watching a bunch of the role play West Marches campaign with It Me JP, DM'd by Stephen Lumpkin, with a bunch of different big sort of streaming creators. It had Dodger, it had a bunch of people. And I think that what happened there was that they could not get a group of people committed to an ongoing campaign, but they could get people to jump in on it regularly. And so that you did see that sort of rotation. Where that one fell down for me was in getting attached to the characters, because characters would die or people would want to play a new character the next time. So I did fall off in terms of that. And I think that character and story is so key to the success of Critical Role that it will be interesting to see how this premise of an overarching story that is not focused on the character story is going to work. But I don't know. The only interesting thing I have to say there is I don't think this is going to be West Marches. I think this is just going to be rotational.
When I saw they said West Marches, my first thought was, oh no, the didactic, pedantic internet is going to just go, well, actually. And so, yeah, I would love it to be an actual West Marches campaign where they'd have to call up each of the actors every week and say, okay, who's free? All right, you're just going to show up. Where did you want to go on the map? Okay, yeah, come on down. Right? Because that's sort of the opposite of what a lot of people see actual plays as, which is scripted. Even if it's not scripted, they see it as scripted. And that's the opposite of what West Marches is, because you never know who's going to show up, or you have 3 days as the game master to prepare whatever game that you're going to be running for these folks. And I would love to see that. I would love to see Brendan Lee Mulligan doing that sort of semi-improv, sort of running the game, not scripted, and seeing the story that he could weave with the different characters that may show up. But as soon as I saw there's going to be this group, and this group, I was like, well, it might still be interesting, but it's not going to be interesting in the same way that Critical Role has been interesting in the past. And it's the old self-selecting audience, right? You do it one way, the people that don't like it leave, and the people that do like it stay, and then you change it up, and the people that would have liked it have already left, and the people that did like the old stuff might not like the new stuff. So they are very entertaining folks. Brennan Lee Mulligan is a kick-ass dungeon master and entertainer, and if anybody can pull it off, it's likely he can. So I'm not going to watch, but I wouldn't have watched no matter what. So hopefully people will come to check it out.
There's one aspect of my understanding of a West Marches campaign, because again, a lot of like articles online started re-explaining what a West Marches campaign kind of was in the pure sense of the term, which had me thinking, and I was like, oh, maybe I should run a West Marches style campaign. That would be really interesting. Is this idea, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure the chat will, or the comment section below, that the players kind of decide for themselves what they want to do in the next part of the adventure, and that they kind of help to flesh out like a map or an area that might be, you might know there's mountains over there because the DM said there's mountains over there, or it might be complete fog of war and the party go, hey, we want to go over there and we think there might be mountains. What's over there? And the DM kind of has to start spinning up, okay, so there's mountains, but it's kind of like world building coming from the players as opposed to necessarily the DM. One player might go, I need to go home and visit my monastery, and they're in this mountain range over here. Can we go there for a session? And the rest of the group agree, to go.
Do you know who would have been a great system for that kind of game? Daggerheart. Just saying.
I'd be interested to see if they take that approach where the world building isn't just coming from Brennan, as a lot of the world building came from Matt in previous Critical Role campaigns, but see it really come from the group and the players, over the course of a couple of weeks. I don't think that's what they're going to do, but I'd be interested to see that.
Yeah. I do think it's worth just saying out loud, the reason to call it West Marches, even if it isn't quite West Marches, is because West Marches sounds cool. West Marches is marketable.
West Marches has some semblance of SEO.
Yes, exactly.
Well, I mean, the cool thing about West Marches too is it's very much like a living campaign in the sense that one group does a thing, affects the world, and then the other groups have to deal with the fallout of that. Oh, you went off into the mountains to attack that mage's tower. Oh, you failed, and now undead are streaming out of the mage's tower. Oh, now we have to deal with that undead problem when we go out, in that direction. So that's cool in that sense.
That's fun.
Yeah, it's very fun as long as it works for the audience that you have curated over a decade of play.
There's something about Free Marches style play that, and I need you to just go with me here, that synesthetically has the same color and tone as the game Microscope. And so Shawn gets it.
Yeah.
Wasn't
it's the same person that created both, right? Ben Robbins created both.
What?
Ars Ludi.
Ben Robbins. Ben Robbins created Microscope, and he was the one that set up this style and blogged about this style. Yes, Dael just won the internet. We can all leave now.
Synesthesia is real, and no one can ever question me again. Thank you so much. Thank you.
So, speaking of fun things...
Well, wait, hold on. Before we get on to fun things, let me be pedantic a little second longer. First of all, they have said that these groups are not set in stone. And I think there's a lot of open space here to see what that actually means. Because there's more to this than there are three parties and they rotate, right? The things that they keep talking about are like classic fantasy stories. They bring up Lord of the Rings, they bring up Game of Thrones multiple times. And one of the things that happens in those stories is that characters are put together, taken apart, and put back together in different combinations of characters to see the different kinds of friction that spark off of each other. And that's not, literally how the West Marches style works. It's more player driven who's there that week, as we've been saying. But Also, Critical Role is not how playing D&D works. Critical Role is a very tailored, very polished, and only increasing in tailorship and polishingship as time has gone on. And so I think that people will have a very similar experience with the West Marches, right? They will hear about it from Critical Role. They will think, what an awesome way to play. And they'll get a very idealized version of it. And I think, if we're being real, fewer people will play in the West Marches style as a result of Critical Role doing it than we think, right? It won't be the same explosion that we saw with D&D as an entire style of game, simply because the West Marches takes a lot more work, funnily enough, as a way to save work on the GM's part of organizing a game every week. You need more people. You need self-directed players. And I tend to think that those things are in short supply. But anyway, the main point is there will be something West March-like about their more narrative aspirations for this game. And that's the thing that I'm most excited to see about this upcoming campaign.
Is West Marches like an IP? Like, is it like a trademarkable thing? No,
you probably could trademark it. But
I mean, like, it probably is trademarkable, but it is not trademarked
currently. Yeah, I was just going to say, like, you know, give it a year or two and Wizards of the Coast come out with the West Marches supplement that's like exactly how to run a West Marches style campaign in their minds.
Ben Robbins should release it into the Creative Commons. That'll cut all of this off.
Yeah, Ben Robbins, creator of also Microscope.
Speaking of West Marches,
by the way, sorry.
Yes, please go ahead, James.
This is just a fun little fact. The marches in West Marches. This is me being an etymology nerd. The marches. It is not about marching. It's not about the month of March. It is not even an old Englishy way of saying marshes. No, it's about borders. It's about borders, like Marcher Lords in England. They were the border barons of the territories. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's a game about exploring the borders of the known world. It's about pushing out into the unknown. That's where West Marches comes from.
Well, speaking of lords and tyrants, I can't make I was hoping for a better segue than this. I'm just gonna go into this. I'm really excited. I'm gonna put on the cheering thing because wait, I gotta take it back. Well, speaking of things to celebrate, like the new season of Critical Role, one thing that we are definitely celebrating, this is a little bit of a slightly early announcement because of the nature of the way that we record this, but as of about 24 hours, no, not even 12 hours from now, I'm pretty sure, the Grim Hollow Player's Guide is going to be released on D&D Beyond. So you will be able to go to D&D Beyond if you're listening to this on YouTube. There'll be links down in the description and grab it from there. There's also being bundled with the campaign guide, which is on pre-order if you get the bundle and both of them together. But it's going up. It's going to be live. It's going to be on the platform. You're going to be able to put your Monster Hunter onto D&D Beyond. You're going to be able to choose your heritages. You're going to be able to take advantage of the advanced weapons and the additional weapon masteries that they have. So we're introducing new weapon masteries to D&D 2024 with this book. Shawn, are you excited about this?
I am very excited, and it takes a lot to get me excited these days, but I am ready. I am ready for this to be up. I did some play testing of some adventures this weekend, and the players were playing Grim Hollow content, and one of them was bemoaning the fact that it wasn't on D&D Beyond to be able to do, and I said, just you wait a couple of days, young man, and then, yes, you will be able to go on to D&D Beyond and create with the character builder this Grim Hollow character.
What are they playing, curiously?
Oh, we have a monster hunter. I believe we have a monk who might take the Leaden Way, or the Leaden Crown.
Yep.
We have an executioner, a paladin who is an executioner who is going to take the slaughter, the Oath of Slaughter.
Yep.
So we have a lot of goodies that are coming. And I can't wait.
I'm looking forward to this just being a barrier down for folks as well, because I have the exact same situation where I have a group that we are playing in a Grim Hollow campaign right now. There's only 3 of them, but they are all using D&D Beyond. And the first question I got was, is this going to be on D&D Beyond? And the answer is yes. It is going to be up. I am going to do a stream, I think, later in the week, probably Thursday night US time, where I will share screen and build some characters in D&D Beyond using the Grim Hollow options. Because look, this is a fully featured book. There are new spells, there are new weapon masteries, there are new species with their own species traits. The only thing that is not in there, basically, for this to be a complete, almost, I don't want to say its own system, but its own kind of branch of 5e, if you will, is the core classes themselves. That's the only thing that is missing from this book. So I will go on and be making some characters later in the week if you just want to see what it's all about. You haven't dived deep into Grim Hollow yet. It'll be an exciting time. Also, if you would rather get the hard copies or you're a PDF person, you can still go to the Kickstarter page as well and late pledge. You won't be able to get the D&D Beyond version through Kickstarter anymore. You need to go to D&D Beyond, but you can grab it there immediately and it is unlocked immediately. So go check it out. Speaking of checking things out on D&D Beyond, so there is a new Unearthed Arcana for apocalyptic subclasses featuring 4 subclasses, which are the Druid, Circle of Preservation, the Fighter, Gladiator archetype, the Sorcerer, Defiled Sorcery, and the Warlock, Pact of Sorcerer King Patron. Did we look at these in any detail? I had a glance. The Gladiator looks cool.
I did my 3Fs review of them.
Okay, great.
Right?
Yeah.
Fun, flavorful, and freaking balanced. And so far, flavorful, absolutely. You could tell that they were working, let's say, from a previous model of a setting, because they had very specific things that they wanted each of these characters to be able to do. That setting is obviously Dark Sun, based on things like the Sorcerer King and Defiling and Gladiators. So the flavor was just dripping off of these things. Fun is in the eye of the beholder. There are some things that I think might not be the most fun that you could have with that sort of character, especially the Preservation Druid. The Preservation Druid seemed to be all about making this little box on the board and moving it around so people could be in it and out of it, or in it and out of it. And I like sort of the mechanics of it. I just don't know if it's going to capture a player's fancy to make the box and then have other people put things in the box or him move the box.
Fancy is, of course, the 4th F.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then balanced is, we'll see. We'll see after some play. I didn't see anything that stood out as completely broken. The Gladiator, it was all about using the different weapon masteries, or just using any weapon mastery you want as you play, which gives that weapon mastery system a big reason to be there, right? This is using that weapon mastery system to its fullest potential. And we had talked before about, I don't think it was on the show, but just in game design terms, of making a class that just weapon mastery is their thing. Well, that's what the Gladiator does. Be charismatic and use weapon masteries.
I guess, look, my angle on this, or what interests me about this, because folks have been asking me specifically, I think somebody in chat just asked, and I got a comment on a YouTube video that we did about my take on Dark Sun. And I'm going to be honest, I don't have one. I understand that it is like D&D's classic, like, dark fantasy. Everything sucks and everybody's dying and there's no metal or water or the fundamentals required for survival. This is just my impression of it. I know it's like Dante's favorite setting, basically, I believe, ever. But because there haven't been any, for reasons, supplements or anything in Dark Sun since I joined the hobby, I've never been exposed to it in a 5th edition context, or in a context that has felt accessible to me. And also having my own campaign setting before Grim Hollow, and now Grim Hollow kind of fulfilling that dark fantasy, and even Ravenloft, I suppose, before that, filling those horror themes for me. I've never had a reason. I've never had it presented to me like, hey, you should check this out. This is Dark Sun. And I've never had a reason to branch into it. So Shawn, I'm assuming probably the person with the most Dark Sun knowledge, unless James is going to rock in here and surprise us all.
Should have Tails on the stream.
What's the elevator pitch for Dark Sun? Why should somebody be excited for it?
I don't know. I don't know why. Well,
It's a dark day for Dark Sun.
Dark Sun came out at a strange time in D&D's history. It was during that period of the end of second edition or the middle of second edition, when they were just putting out new settings one after the other so quickly that you had trouble keeping up. And Dark Sun came out when I stopped playing D&D for life reasons. And so in my mind, Dark Sun was the reason why I quit, even though that wasn't the case. That wasn't the case, but it was like, I have to stop playing, but I'm okay with that because here's one more setting.
I get you.
The setting is called problematic, and it is problematic in the same way that everything 10 years or older is problematic because life changes. So now on the flip side, I can't think of a setting that is more relevant right now to what we're going through in the world than this setting, where these all-powerful people / demigods have convinced a bunch of people that they should worship them and work for them, while whether through the denotation or connotation of the word slavery, take over these people and force them to do work for little or no money. If that doesn't sound like something that I want to get involved with and fight against those forces, I don't know what is a better time for that.
Sure.
So how that setting is handled is super important. You should be fighting against the Sorcerer Kings, not using them as a patron, right? You should be fighting the people who are defiling, not being a defiler. The defiling in the original setting was anyone could do it, but it destroyed life around you.
With the defiling being overuse of magic desertified the world.
Exactly. So there were ways that you could use magic without defiling. That was the special ability you got, not you have a special ability to defile. So I'm trying to figure out how to position this where you are on the side of righteousness and not on the side of the people that are destroying the world or oppressing the world. I'm hoping, assuming that there's a setting that's coming with this, that we see that aspect of it, not the opposite.
There's one thing about Dark Sun that I know everybody loved about it, and that I think will be very hard for them to bring back. And it's that Brahm did a lot of the art for it. You know, artistic scion of Franz Frazetta, Brahm, the monomonicard, with all of his mostly naked people and their perfectly sculpted muscles and behinds doing swords and sandals stuff in a blasted wasteland. I love Brahm. I love all the male and female fan service that we get from him, but I do not think that is in the artistic wheelhouse of Wizards of the Coast Dungeons and Dragons at this moment in time. I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's got a very specific art. Like, I can identify Dark Sun when I see it, even without the Dark Sun logo.
Looks like Conan,
right? When you see the artwork. Yeah, totally. But like, with all the oranges turned up to 11. And orange is not my favorite color, so that's another reason I struggle with Dark Sun a little bit. Is that odd? But I would be interested to see that style of artwork reinterpreted, you know, by the Wizards of the Coast art team. I think they have an excellent art team, like some of the best in the industry. And I would love to see them kind of modernize and re-realize the palette of orange and deserts. In terms of the setting itself, I think, and I'm not expecting like anybody to have an answer here, but I think the reason I've never connected with it compared to something like a Grim Hollow is I understand it's the setting where everything is dark, like to the point where it almost feels like it starts to get a bit comedic, you know, like Warhammer 40k, like, oh, it's so dark and everything's dark. You just step outside, the sun will melt you. It's dark, no water anywhere, dark. And it's like, all right, I get it. It's dark, even though it's bright orange. My question is, what questions does the setting ask? Right? What questions does it ask the players to consider as they step outside and they adventure through the world, right? It's kind of, I suppose, part of my issue with Forgotten Realms is it doesn't feel to me like the Forgotten Realms really asks a question of the players. It just says, here is a world to go and adventure in and enjoy, which is fine. But when I think of like dark fantasy, I think of like there are themes, right? What are you willing to do for the sake of good? How does the world beat you back and force you to make difficult decisions? And if it's not possible to do that in Dark Sun in a tasteful way, like I don't know enough about the setting. I know it's got this reputation as being like grievously inappropriate and problematic, as you said, Shawn. But I don't find the setting interesting in either direction then. If it's so dark and so problematic that you can't even glance at it.
It's too dark even for Ben Byrne.
Well,
That's how dark it is.
That's our thumbnail pull quote.
Too dark. No, the thumbnail joke is staring into the sun with it like blaring in your face and saying it's too dark.
Is this dark fantasy?
Yeah. Is this what dark looks like? I don't know. I might be talking around in circles, but I need to know
think
more
the
about it.
problematicness of Dark Sun is sometimes overstated, either for comedic effect or for I don't know, because someone has an axe to grind. I think Dark Sun is dark. Like let's not get it twisted. There's like cannibalism and slavery and like bad stuff happening all the time. There is reasonable things to say I don't want that in my leisure time. I don't want to experience that. And I don't want a company making games I like diverting resources that they could be spending on something I really do like to make that instead. Right. I'm not saying that people are wrong for disliking that, but I think it's about as dark as like a particularly gnarly bit of Mad Max. And like, that's not the end of the world.
I'm kind of glad you've said that, James, because that is a little bit of my impression as well. But at the same time, the setting has such a reputation, and maybe there's something that I'm just not aware of because I'm not educated enough in the setting that, really genuinely upsets people. And that's fine if that's the case.
The one question that the original setting, I believe, and again, I never played the original setting. I got into it with 4th edition because I was working on projects. But I think the original question was, here are these super powerful beings that control the world. They each have their own little city-state with its own capital. And in this one place, people rose up and deposed the Sorcerer King. And now they're in charge. Who is going to take over? Who is going to be the leader? Who is going to do this? Will, as we see in real history, the revolutionaries sometimes end up being worse than the people they overthrew. That is sort of one of those questions that you can explore with that. You don't have to. The question is then, how do you start from this base of safety and retake the rest of this world from these other super powerful tyrants?
Yeah, cool. So that's Dark Sun. It's dark.
Yeah,
Now they can edit that so it's closer together.
Yeah.
I was going to say, people have been asking for Dark Sun since the birth of 5e. I think the farthest back Dark Sun reference I can remember was there was a piece of setting adaptation guidance in Princes of the Apocalypse. You could follow that guidance to set that adventure in Eberron or in Dark Sun. And that was about it. That's the only bit of Dark Sun that we've gotten, other than maybe a name drop of the world of Athos in a Dungeon Master's Guide or something like that. And if you're really closely following D&D forums or D&D social media or whatever, every now and then you'll see someone be like, "They got to bring back Dark Sun, man." But I really think that it's just it's a vocal minority. I'm really curious to see actually if all the design work for these subclasses goes anywhere at all, right? I mean, surely they wouldn't have started design on something if they didn't really have plans to put out Dark Sun. But I am surprised to hear that they're putting out anything Dark Sun at all, because I think that audience for the most part is aging. There are no new Dark Sun fans coming along, just as we've said. So do they have plans for a grand Dark Sun revival? If they do, that's the only way that this makes sense to me.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, the pontificating online has been 2026. We are likely, based on this, to see a Dark Sun supplement. Probably late 2026, I would guess at this point, if they haven't announced anything yet. Who knows? That might not be true. They might change their mind based on this Unearthed Arcana or the reaction from the audience, or they might, push a whole hog into it. Coffee Pyro's saying in chat, as a player GM, do you throw out 90% of the equipment table and starter equipment in a setting such as Dark Sun? Won't the fighter player cry? Because my understanding is there's no metal in Dark Sun, so everything has to be built from bone and rock, and there's a degradation system for the weapons and armor that they break eventually. I'm not going to lie, I think that sounds interesting. I know that weapon degradation can be annoying in video games. I didn't love it in Breath of the Wild when I was constantly replacing stuff.
And it's a nightmare in Animal Crossing.
But what I do like about settings is them introducing things. Like I said before, the Grim Hollow Player's Guide, you could almost play a complete game of 5e. All you need are the core classes added to it. Use some rules from the campaign guide, and you have a adjusted version of 5th edition that is different from the core rules, right? There are games that do this to a greater degree, such as the Lord of the Rings 5e, uses completely different classes. But I kind of like setting books that take the rules of 5e and impose themselves a little bit on the system to be able to capture the feel of that setting. So I would hope that a Dark Sun supplement would provide a new equipment list that's this is how weapon degradation works, this is what a bone sword looks like versus a rock axe or whatever.
But how much of that do you need Dark Sun for versus just going to an OSR game that people like?
Fair question, but I guess the answer is if you like Dark Sun, that's why you would go to.
Yeah, but you're describing it as
Sun.
though you don't care about the setting, but you would be interested in those elements of it that are imposed upon the system as it exists in order to reinforce the setting. But you could do that with a setting that you do find more interesting.
I feel like you've just morphed into one of those people from your comment section going why don't you just get another system? I'm like,
you know what?
Well,
you got
because
me there.
I want to play 5e and I just want to adjust the rules, in a slight way to.
Okay.
We also
They're too long into the abyss.
We don't want to conflate dark with simple. People want the complexity of the D&D 5e rules, but they also want this other subsystem making their own weapons or defiling or surviving in a world without gods or divine magic. So
I guess
it's a thing.
Yeah, my touchstone for an OSR type system is Shadow Dark, right? Even though it uses a lot of 5e, my understanding is that is my understanding of what an OSR is without going into a completely different system. And don't get me wrong, I am very interested in playing Shadow Dark. I really want to try Shadow Dark. It's just a matter of have not found the time or person to run it yet. My feeling is that running Dark Sun and running Shadow Dark, those games are trying to achieve different things, even if they're approaching quote unquote darkness in different ways. Shadow Dark's more about being down in the dark and your torch is going to run out and horrible monsters are going to eat you. Dark Sun, based on this conversation almost purely, is about finding ways to survive in a world where tyrants make that almost impossible for anyone who is not themselves. And so even though I may or may not play in Dark Sun, the systems that specific story or the questions that are being asked by that setting is why I would choose that system over something like an OSR or a Shadow Dark.
And also there are cannibal halflings.
And also there are cannibal halflings.
Well, that's my understanding of one of the reasons people hate the setting. Is it kind of like, you know, to use a term that we talked about when we were talking about the races versus species, it kind of bioessentialists certain species into unflattering portrayals that are problematic. And so, can we joke about the cannibal halflings? I'm not sure.
It's so dark, it's funny, right? In that sort of like
That's
edgy 80s movie way. That's why I brought up Mad Max, not because Mad Max is scary.
Are
Mad Max,
all halflings cannibals in Dark Sun?
I don't think in any future.
This is one of those things. This is one of those things where, you know, there was sort of a throwaway line. This is my understanding of something 20 plus years ago. There was sort of this, you know, that they have their own culture when you go into their lands, which is outside of the deserty area. There's actually forest, and they live there. Those that make their home there, and it's not like they're out there with a net and their knives just waiting for you to come. So they have practices that include ritualistic cannibalism.
Oh, that's fine.
It's not fine, but it became.
That's fine. It's fine.
It became such a joke that people were always just like, well, we have a full party of just all halfling cannibals, and we're all carrying ketchup bottles with us, right, wherever we go, because as soon as you turn around, we're going to be sprinkling you with seasoning, and it became a joke because it A, wasn't good, and B, was so different that,
Just goes to show, if you're going to create a dark fantasy game, you better have a good session 0 so that your players don't take all your weird dark stuff out of context.
And speaking of out of context, we are out of time. We hope you've enjoyed this refresher on Dark Sun, a setting we are all clearly intimately familiar with apologies to Dante.
Having to try to guide us.
Our long-suffering companion.
And the real Dark Sun, like, historians are just shaking their head at me because I'm mangling everything too. So take that.
The real Dark Sun is the ritualistic cannibalism that we found along the way.
Yeah.
I'm just loving this idea of the real Dark Sun historians, these kind of astute people who... All right, anyway, if you want to catch us live and ask us questions and see the unedited version of this where we stumbled over ourselves, you can catch us live at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 4 p.m. Pacific on a Monday, or it is 9 a.m. Australian Eastern Time on a Tuesday if you are in Australia, and if you are elsewhere in the world, good luck to you. Or you can catch us on YouTube. That might be where you're watching us right now. Or Spotify. You can leave comments on Spotify. Or other podcast apps of your choice. Likes, thumbs, stars, stuff. Get us out to more listeners. If you're still here, thank you very much for tuning in. I've been Ben Byrne, here with Shawn Merwin, James Hager, Dael Kingsmill. And we will be back next week with another episode of the Eldritch Lorecast. Ba-ba-da, ba-ba-da, ba-ba-da. Ba-ba-da-ba.
Yep. You need the canned babadas.
Canned babadas.
Can you imagine?
Yeah, that would be good.
I'll just get Dante to can some babadas for us.
Just a bunch of people
good canned babada.
Open a can of whoop babada.